Welcome to the very first episode of the Tamriel Report, your weekly breakdown of ESO news, updates, community reactions, and pretty much my honest takes on things that don't always fit into a YouTube video. Today I'm going to talk about why I decided to do a solo podcast, what you can expect from it, and the big topic of this week, the recent ESO developer stream on Twitch, and why it genuinely feels like the devs are actually communicating more openly than they ever have inside of the game. So let's start with why this kind of came about. I've wanted to do some type of podcast on the channel, and I may do different ones down the road. But I've been thinking about doing something within ESO podcast-wise for a while now. And instead of doing your basic, normal podcast that you see all the time where it's someone with a cam on interviewing people, I decided I was going to do this solo podcast in game. So you're seeing just kind of the game in general, because that is what I'm talking about. So I hope you kind of enjoy this different experience. That way you can kind of just kick back, watch it on your TV, maybe listen to it while you're helping your kids with homework, cooking dinner, whatever you got going on in real life. On YouTube, I cover a lot of information from drops to guides to events, different games even. I mean, there's a lot of things I do here on the channel. But when it comes to just ESO content, there's a lot more going on within the community. There's bigger conversations and a lot of stuff that just does not fit into a 5 to 10 minute normal video. This podcast is where I kind of just slow all of that down and talk about why and what is actually going on inside of these updates, instead of just going through kind of the motions and telling you all the new details. I've wanted to do this for a while. Like I said, it's just something that has taken kind of some time to get going. But ESO is a game that is built on conversation, really. I mean, the players in the game talk in the chat. You have guilds talking to each other all the time. You have the communities on Reddit, on the forums, talking all the time about ESO. Things they like, things they don't like, from combat in PvE and PvP to housing to just whatever. It does not matter. Fashion even. There are so many conversations about the Elder Scrolls Online that go on behind the scenes that I think a lot of the player base doesn't really see. Maybe they're more of a casual fan. They don't get to see a lot of these topics. They don't read a lot of these topics. And I think this is a good way to kind of get this information out there in kind of a laid back, relaxed setting and environment. And lately with the recent dev stream, it feels like the communication between the devs and the community is shifting in a totally different direction. At least it seems like that on the outside. So this is why the podcast is kind of my way of capturing these moments, talking about them, breaking them down, and giving you, like I said, kind of just a relaxed environment to hear the full story behind what's happening and what's going on inside of Tamriel just in general. Now, I'm not sure how often I'm going to upload these. We're going to kind of have to wait and see how this goes, along with everything else I do here on the channel. I would like to do it weekly or every couple of weeks or maybe just, once a month. Like I said, we'll wait and see. Kind of as time goes on. But I hope you do enjoy this and leave me a comment if this is something you are interested in. This week, the topic, like I said, is going to be ESO's developers talking about everything going on right now in the game and everything coming to the game. This was a recent stream, of course, they did have on Twitch just a few days back. And it was a bit different. Now, in the future, I hope they maybe do the actual stream a bit differently just from a viewer standpoint. I think having so many developers on there didn't really give each dev an in-depth kind of time to explain what they were talking about. They were having to bounce around between, different people. And they did even mention that they may have more or less kind of guests on the show. So that's something that I hope they kind of adjust in the future. But in all honesty, it still felt like they were giving some of those normal answers that we always hear. Here's some stuff we're working on. We can't tell you about it yet. We're going to give you a couple hints. But at the same time, they were transparent about some of the new systems that they're adding in. And one thing that came to mind is when Finn was talking about the new, of course, challenge system, the new overland difficulty system, and how some things weren't ready yet. This was a, kind of a raw look at what they're working on. And at least they weren't trying to cover up that it wasn't perfect yet. That it wasn't just, everything that you expected to be, that it's still a work in progress. And I assume even when that overland difficulty content update, I guess I should say, drops, it's still going to be a work in progress. But what really stood out was there were some moments, in there where everything was very honest when it comes to how they were, kind of answering the topics they were talking about. It wasn't like it was a normal podcast where they had someone that was not a person that works for the game asking them questions. And now, of course, these questions, I'm sure, are things that they wanted to talk about. But still, at the same time, I felt like they were a bit more honest in this, at least, than what they had been in the past, where they kind of give you just that normal corporate answer. They really didn't dodge anything too much, I don't think. They didn't really discuss a lot of things that they're working on in the future, but when it comes to the things they're working on right now, they pretty much answered a lot of those questions and talked about that stuff. They talked about things like performance, how classes are going to work going forward with all the changes, and even some more long-term systems that, they're wanting to share, but just not quite yet. And this was a big thing to me because ESO players don't want just patch notes or just little blog post about what's coming to the game or new events or whatever the case may be. They actually want reasoning from the development team, and that is one thing that ZOS has not done very well over the years. And at times it's had its ups and downs when it comes to how well they communicate. But now it seems like they're really trying to work on that communication idea more than they ever have. And having the developers on there talking about stuff and actually playing and walking you through their thought process, and for us to be able to see these things happening firsthand, is a good thing. And I hope they continue this. Even though they've done things like this in the past, they're talking about at least posting a video with them every month. And they've also talked about doing AMAs on Reddit, posting more on social media, and talking to the fan base just overall about everything in the game. And we'll have to wait and see if that actually happens. A lot of development teams out there, no matter the game, talk a big talk and sometimes don't back it up. And some development teams out there do an insane job of keeping up with everything going on in the community, answering what questions they can, and just really building a good rapport with the community in general. And I think that is one thing that the Elder Scrolls Online, unfortunately, has always lacked. I think that in the end, it felt like a more open, more conversation type podcast or just dev stream than they have ever done before. They were more willing to talk about what's going on right now in game. And of course, we did hear from some of the developers at the end of last year. That was their main talking point. And each one of those developers, kind of letters to the community, they talked about how they wanted the community to be able to interact with them more, and they wanted to get their faces out there more and interact with the community as well. So it looks like they are really working on that right now. We'll have to wait and see, like I said, if this continues and if they continue to stay as open about the game. If the game is in a good spot, that's easy to do. If the game's in a bad spot, sometimes that gets a bit harder to do because a lot of the criticism is going to be harsh towards anything they talk about. But at the same time, we'll have to wait and see if these live streams get to the point of where they're not really discussing a lot of new stuff, or they're just kind of going through the motions and it's not as engaging as it was this past time. I think the devs are listening more right now than they have in a really long time. The game is not perfect. Everything they talked about is not perfect in any way. Not every issue has ever been resolved inside of ESO, nor will I ever think it will be. It's just not going to happen. everyone that plays the Elder Scrolls Online plays it in a different way. So I'm not sure if you can ever make the game perfect for everyone. But the biggest thing that you can do is have great communication to improve everything else. Even if you can't make the game perfect, even if there are problems, even if there are downtimes, players are leaving the game in larger numbers than they have in the past. It does not matter. If you communicate with the community in general, people will respect that a lot more. The community, of course, is the foundation of any game, and the community having a open communication line with the developers makes the game and the developer kind of relationship a lot better. It's really all about trust. A lot of course, people out there in different games, you see them talk about how they don't trust devs. They feel like, depending on whatever game it is, that they just, lie to them. They don't tell them the truth. They don't like the game anymore because of that. And of course, a lot of that is just complaining. Let's be honest. If you get on the internet, on forums, on social media posts, most every comment is just negativity. That's something that nowadays seems to be the fun thing to post, I guess. I don't know. I guess people like to just rage bait and troll folks and whatever. Being a content creator for as long as I have, I just kind of have learned to read over and just not even pay attention to and ignore all the crap. I mean, there's just no need in even worrying about it. So when it comes to how these developers actually respond to the community, sometimes it's hard to know, what the community really thinks, because you see a lot of that just griping and complaining that's probably not relevant, or trolling that's not relevant. Then there's some real issues out there that may get skipped over. And I think they're trying to, be more open, go out there and look at all of this stuff, the good and the bad. Like I said, that is hard to do when the game is not really in its best place that it has been in the last several years. And I'm not sure what the situation's going to be by the end of 2026. Going away from chapters is a big change, and all games that are out for any extended period of time go through big changes every couple of years, and this is a massive one. So I'm really going to be interested to see how the community responds to a new season idea, how the developers relay all that info to us. ESO doesn't need a miracle. It just needs a better direction and more conversation, in my opinion, to make this a more enjoyable game for everyone all the way around, from the development team to the player base. And for the first time in probably ever, or at least a really long time, it seems like we're getting that. But I do stress the word seems. We'll have to wait and see, like I said. Months down the road, we'll have to see if this open communication thing is still something that they are really doing. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not gonna say they're just doing it because their player numbers are bad. But I'm sure that is in a lot of you out there, a lot of your minds. As I lost my train of thought, but I thought that myself. Are they just doing this because the player base has fallen off over the years? People are complaining more about the game. People aren't playing as much as they used to. They're moving on to other stuff. And I'm sure a lot of you are like myself. You probably play tons of different games. I don't know if you play the same games I do, but I started playing video games on my brother's Atari when I was a kid in the 80s. So I've played video games for a long time, and I've always been a fan of tons of different genres. I mainly play RPGs and first-person shooters, but I play a lot of different stuff. And I've seen so many different development teams over the years make promises of how they're going to communicate and just not go through with it. And that's kind of why I said I'm sure most of you had this train of thought like I did. They're just saying this because the game's not doing that well. But like I said, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think we are getting a better conversation from the development team overall. Before I wrap this up, I want to mention something that I'm going to kind of do within the show whenever I do it in each episode. I want to include a quick practical tip or something you can use right away in your daily ESO routine. Maybe it's about farming, maybe it's about crafting, combat, whatever. Other episodes, I'm going to talk about things like popular community posts, discussions about housing, things that the community is talking about in general, maybe some memes they throw out, just, stuff that's kind of fun within ESO overall. But today, my main point here is if you have not watched that recent podcast, go to Twitch, go to Bethesda's channel, and look at the podcast that they posted just a few days back. Even though if you don't watch the whole thing, you kind of skim through it, I think it's a good thing for all players to understand the direction of the game. That kind of helps you plan your builds. It helps you plan your future farming, maybe if you're in a trading guild, how things are going to work out for you if you're selling a lot of stuff, and just really kind of your long-term goals in the game. So that's my quick tip for today, and I hope that one, if you have not watched it, I hope that kind of helps you out in understanding what's going on inside of ESO right now. The next episode, I'm not quite sure when it's going to be. Like I said, I don't know how often I'm going to do this, but in that next episode, we're going to talk about events and how ESO might actually have too many of them. A lot of players lately have been feeling a kind of burnout when it comes to, just the rewards and the amount of events we have, because it's just the same thing year after year, and the pacing is like it's picked up over time. We have so many events in game. It's really hard to get excited about them. And whether this constant cycle of all these events is going to help the game just in general or be more of a overwhelming thing for veteran and new players alike. So this is going to be something that I know is a big topic inside the community, and it's going to be a really good conversation, I think. Thanks for listening to the first episode of the Tamriel Report. Like I said, this is going to be a solo podcast. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, what it's going to look like a month from now, a year from now, or whatever. We're just going to kind of play it by ear, but I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did like the content, make sure that you, of course, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you have not already. And everybody that always watches my content, no matter what content you are watching here on the channel, I do appreciate it. Drop your thoughts, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.